Let me start by letting you know right off the bat, I don't sing, I don't dance, and I don't paint, and I don't photograph. And that's unfortunate because it's late in the day. But I just wanted to get that on the table. And the other thing is, this is a Seminary in the megachurch collaborative pedagogy, and I'm by myself. Everybody else has had teams, but I'm just by myself. So I just want you to know that I acknowledge these things and know them, and you can do with them whatever you want. When I began teaching at St. Paul 14 years ago, its Kansas City, Missouri campus was located in an inner city neighborhood in northeast Kansas City, known for its historic character, its racial and ethnic diversity, its wide range of socioeconomic class, and its high crime. It was one of the things that excited me about teaching there. In 2007, St. Paul opened another campus. That campus is still located on the grounds of Oklahoma City University. Okay, so we have a campus on a university we're a standalone institution still. We're our own institution, but our building, we share space with Oklahoma City University. And then in the summer of 2013, St. Paul moved its Kansas City campus to an affluent, largely homogeneous suburb across the state line. Kansas City is, the metropolitan area is divided kind of by a road, and on one side of the road is Missouri, and on the other side of the road is Kansas. And as some folks reminded me, and we're often quite aware of it when we live on the Missouri side. I live on the Missouri side. The county on the Kansas side grew with racial covenants. So there's a big difference between the two sides of the city. So we also moved from being property owners to to sharing space. And the property that we had in the Kansas City campus was kind of a typical university looking. We had dorms, we had a chapel, a library, we had a classroom building on a large kind of green lawn space, right? So now we are located in the education building of a megachurch in collaboration with the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection. Church of the Resurrection is the largest United Methodist church in the world, with somewhere around 20,000 members. It has 4 campuses across the Kansas City metro area, and it has many partner churches across the country that it resources. And in the 4 campuses in the Kansas City area, the senior pastor, Adam Hamilton, from the Leawood Church, where we are, is live streamed out on Sundays for the sermon, just for the sermon. They have a staff of about, over 250 people. They have about a dozen or so ordained pastors. They offer a large number of worship services Saturday and Sunday, although most of it, they're diverse in their music a little bit, but pretty much their traditional United Methodist approach to worship. So it's not, in this way, it's not like non-denominational megachurches, okay? They're live streamed every Sunday to who knows how many people around the world who tune in on the internet. And part of their mission, part of what they consider their mission, is to resource churches around the world and to raise up leaders for a vital future church. This is a growing church, right? This church is growing. It's mainline, and it's growing. Now, well, we won't talk about how mainline right now, but the campus move was just one part of a larger collaboration between St. Paul's School of Theology and the Church of the Resurrection. I want you to know that we maintain our institutional autonomy, right? So we are governed separately, our finances are, we did not merge, we were not taken in, we still have to meet all the accreditation standards of all those bodies. So one part of the move was about us sharing space, and we share IT. They have a phenomenal IT department. They have their own video production department. We share that, right? And they added some people just to resource us. We share classrooms. So we have a classroom in there, a seminary class in the week, and they have Sunday school there on Sundays. Sometimes we don't have classes on Wednesday night because they have a big Wednesday night thing. So it's really shared space. If you've ever been in a church that had a preschool or had a, it's that same kind of thing. And so we argue things like where the wastebaskets go, or who puts what on the walls, or those kind of things as well, and the chairs, etc. But the other part of the collaboration is focused on pedagogy and curriculum. They, as a congregation, as a small city congregation or medium-sized city congregation, they want to support seminary students and theological education. They want to provide a kind of what they call a training ground or training field for ministry. One of the many conversations we have had is that we prefer the word education to training. They prefer the word training. This involves the kinds of things that I mentioned. One of the things that I find just really exciting about it is how many volunteers from the congregation want to support us and our students. Now, it's very unusual to think about what, I was just kind of blown away by this, At the start of every semester, our students are, if they want to participate, they can have a partner in the congregation who sends them little Starbucks gift cards periodically, and the students choose whether they want to participate. Sends them prayers and holiday cards and brings in snacks and these kinds of things. They volunteer to, if I needed something like, if I needed something in particular for one of my classes, I could ask, and they would find a volunteer, somebody from the congregation. The congregation sees this as part of the important ministry to resource the church for the future, the larger church, not the Church of the Resurrection, right? They have their own special Pathways to Ministry program. So if you're a member of the congregation and you have a call to ministry, they have a whole program for that. And we kind of work in conjunction with that now. They sponsor several national conferences throughout the year. I mean, they bring in big name speakers, Brene Brown, for instance, and our students can go to those, and we've made some of them into some courses so that they can go to those as part of their coursework, and they work with a professor, and I'll say more about that later. So St. Paul, we have a historic emphasis on integrating theory and practice and working closely with the church. We want to keep that. We want to keep our commitment to academic rigor, and we want to keep our commitment to social justice. And this is a new way of doing some of those things. Now, I want to say a word about mega churches for a minute. First of all, this is an anomaly for a megachurch. It's not a non-denominational prosperity gospel megachurch. And I said that before. Many people probably in this room and other places, including myself, hear the word megachurch and go, I mean, this was a stadium-sized sanctuary for thousands has never been my ideal worship place, right? That's not what I've been about. When you walk into the narthex this is the narthex, by the way. This is the current sanctuary. They're building a new $90 million sanctuary, but this is the current one, main building. I couldn't take a picture that would show you the whole thing because it's blocks. But this is the narthex, and you walk in and you feel like you're in a convention center lobby. It has a bookstore and a coffee shop and a deli kind of thing and all kinds of spaces. Megachurches in general have the reputation of being at least moderately conservative, and they have a reputation of being driven by power and wealth and the charisma of an individual leader. I'm not going to say a lot about how much I think Church of the Resurrection is driven by those things, because I'm not here to critique the church, itself as an institution, or to tell you much about that. I want to talk more about the collaboration. But I have to confess that I had a fear of being sucked into the glitz, sucked into the, it's kind of seductive. Adam Hamilton he preached at the inaugural, national prayer. I mean, these people are, it's so smooth and glitzy and sort of gorgeous in the kind of one particular cultural way. I was afraid of that. And I think others were too, and I think that's a fair concern. I also think it's fair to be critical of megachurches. But what I decided to do was work hard to suspend my judgments and my assumptions. I knew people from church. You can't live in Kansas City and not know people from Church of the Resurrection. They were on our board. Adam Hamilton was the chair of our board for a while. I wanted to suspend my judgments and my assumptions and be open, but I didn't want to be naive, right? So I would invite you this afternoon to suspend your assumptions about megachurches, but don't be naive either. I have to say that this particular megachurch, I mean, I have heard story after story after story from people whose lives have been changed by this church, of communities that have been changed by this church. And it often feels too easy for me to dismiss that. And my own experience now of being even more related to this church is that I have seen some of what I consider to be the best of church. And I've seen plenty of the not so best. And I think that's true in any congregation, right? So any congregation, you can see the best of church and the worst of church. But I say that if you're inclined to dismiss anything megachurch, if you can just bracket it a little tiny bit anyway, and consider that something good could come even from a church such as this. The institutional move, that my institution decided to make pushed me out of my comfort zone and pushed me into a mission field that I did not expect to be in. It also increased my gas bill because now I had to drive 30 minutes to work rather than 10. Now, St. Paul has always worked really closely with the United Methodist judicatories around us, and this has been one of the things that gets in there is that somewhere between 60 and 75% of our students at any point in time have been appointed, which is what we do in the Methodist system, to student pastor positions. And the states around us, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, some places in Arkansas, they rely on our students to supply some of their small rural churches. Okay, so in that way, we've had this kind of close connection. We also used to be known for our interdisciplinary team-taught core courses, so that the core of our curriculum was that basically systematic theology was taught with pastoral care. And I taught that. It was a 6-hour course. I taught the pastoral care part, and my colleague and a colleague in systematic theology, and we taught systematic theology. In those courses, they were always paired, a theoretical field with a practical field, right? So history, Bible, and theology paired with pastoral care or preaching or worship. We did that for a very long time. About 14 years ago, we got rid of that because we didn't think it worked for integration, okay? Which I think is interesting. We did something else, and now we've revised our curriculum with this move because it was part of an overall way to change the way we do theological education, and we've been rethinking how do we really teach the integration of theology or theory and the practice of ministry. So we wanted to give thought to a way of integrating this practical wisdom, and we created this new curriculum. It's tempting, I know, to think about some of the institutional questions of how does this work? How does this work in a very practical way institutionally? And I answer questions about that later, but I'm not going to go into that because what I really want us to think about this afternoon is that our institutional politics and institutional choices impact with our pedagogy, right? This intersection is important for us to reflect on, and we know that they're pushed by survival, kind of survival mentality, by money, by all those things, and we sometimes give a little bit of lip service to what's best for students. Not always, but I want us to think about what's best for students. When St. Paul decided to do this, it was a lot of it was motivated by the downturn in economics and the changes that so many standalone seminaries are going through, and other seminaries, other div schools as well, and higher education in general. I asked myself, we were going about, well, the question that was mostly asked was, how will we survive? And I was asking, do we need to? It's like there's a question before that, which is institutions, we get into, we just got to survive because we exist. But do we need to survive? And if we do, why? I mean, what's the reason we need to survive? And one of the things that I came to personally, because I had to feel like this was part of my understanding of the local church, part of my, sort of call, was that standalone seminaries that are not embedded in universities or located in university campuses, like ours was really truly freestanding on the corner in Northeast Kansas City, one of the things that could be something that we could gift to the academy and to the church was that we have ways of being able to be closer to the church and working in conjunction to the church than I think we have ways of being able to do that others may not. Now, those of you who, like Vanderbilt, that are in university settings may challenge me on that, but I thought we have a little bit of more nimbleness that way, because we don't have to prove ourselves in certain ways to the larger university. Okay, so let's talk about the curriculum. There are three aspects to the curricular collaboration. So this is not about the institutional collaborations of space, but the curricular collaborations. The first one is that students at St. Paul are invited to participate in church events and church meetings, and I mentioned the institutes, but we have a liaison on staff at Church of the Resurrection, and if there's a Board of Trustees meeting, for instance, that will welcome a couple students observing, I mean, he puts out like a sort of schedule and say students are welcome to sit and observe the finance committee, the trustee. It's meeting here, it's meeting then. And so they are welcome. And the church sees itself as a place that wants to encourage this kind of education, right? So they are used to having people watch them, be with them, and observe. They're used to being in that kind of teaching mode. So they put out the list, and if students want to go, they contact Jonathan Bell and make arrangements to be one of the two observers or something for that meeting. This has been we have not perfected this. We haven't even gotten close to perfecting this. This is the most complicated and probably the least used. But we're still doing, this is new. We're in our we just completed our second year. Okay, the second one is that St. Paul faculty invite Church of the Resurrection staff or pastors to assist in their classes or to give a guest lecture. For instance, a pastoral care class might invite the executive pastor, that's her title, of congregational care to come by and talk about a particular aspect of their ministry. The ethics course invited the facilities director to come and talk about how they think about environmental concerns as they work on their facilities. The theology class has a guest, what we call a guest practitioner, to come and talk about how they understand their ministry theologically, perhaps. Now, this is not a particularly new thing. Having guest speakers from other settings come to your class is not a particularly new thing. But there's something different, I think, about this when we think of the whole, right? So the students, we begin to develop a deeper relationship with the staff. When I say staff, I mean pastors and lay people and all the volunteers and everything else. And the ministry of the Church of the Resurrection. I mean, we and our students pass these people in the hallways, we see them in the bathrooms, we worship with them on occasion, not always, but they are part of our life. They walk down our hall, they are part of our life. And they eat lunch with the students, by the way. In fact, Resurrection has a plan where they make sure that 10 of their staff people and pastors are eating lunch with our students every other week or something like that. And our student, we provide lunches twice a week. So students regularly engage with this particular ministry, this particular church across the curriculum. Another way that they participate is that some of their pastors serve as our teaching assistants or teaching associates. We at St. Paul, because of our campus in Oklahoma City, we teach almost all of our classes with the video conferencing that you saw, similar, only on a larger scale and probably with a little bit better technology that Kate and Kristen did. So almost all of our classes are taught so that there's a professor and a teaching associate or teaching assistant, a professor on one campus, a teaching associate or teaching assistant in the other campus, real-time video conference with large screens so that everybody can see each other. So they often serve in that way as well. I think that as students regularly engage the folks of Church of the Resurrection across the curriculum, they get more of a sense and critical awareness of integrating seminary education with the work and practice of ministry. I want to say I want to also mention that, for instance, in one class where they look at a lot about Church of the Resurrection, we have to encourage, and we as the faculty are committed to creating space for critique as well, right? So we're always confronted with, this is one way of doing church. And it's probably not the way that most of the people in the faculty want to do church. But here we are. I mean, we were a United Methodist seminary in the same city with the largest United Methodist church in the world. It only makes sense that we try to do something with that can contribute to the vitalization of the church and transformation of the world. The third way that the curricular aspects of the collaboration is working is that St. Paul students are required to complete several practica, which is a new part of our curriculum, which may include resurrection staff or pastors. These practicum, the practica are short-term courses that focus very narrowly on one practice of ministry. Okay, so they might meet a couple times during a semester, or they might meet one day. And they, we have some like how to build a budget, how to plan a stewardship campaign, how to develop an international mission trip, right? So they're very focused on one kind of practice of ministry. And they are developed by a faculty person and a practitioner, which our hope is that, and we do this some already, but we're slowly expanding, right? Our vision is that we will have not just Church of the Resurrection practitioners, but practitioners from other agencies and churches as well. One of the things about Church of the Resurrection is that the congregation supports their pastors doing this as part of their work, right? So they don't say, oh, you're always off there in the St. Paul class. The congregation says, no, that's part of what we expect our pastors to do. Now that's not the usual attitude in a local church. But I have to say that in the places in our curriculum where we use area pastors, like in our contextual ed, for instance, these practica are not our contextual ed. They're in part directed and sort of coordinated through contextual ed, but all the faculty are involved in these. So Bible faculty, theology faculty, not just the quote practices. And also, kind of lost my track. Oh, these are we have contextual education. So from day one, students are in small groups, action, reflection kind of things. They're in those throughout their time in the MDiv program, if they're in the MDiv program. And in the first year, those are led by area pastors from different denominations, right? So there's a contextual ed director who's a member of our faculty, and that has been crucial, that the contextual ed director is part of our faculty. And then in the second year and in the third year, the students do the same kind of thing, but we have ministry collaboration groups, and those are led by faculty. I mean, what we're really thinking about here is how can we best teach students to integrate seminary and their seminary education and the practice of ministry, right? That's what we want to do. But we want to do it so that they are really good at all the theology and Bible and church history and those kinds of things, and the practices. And what we found in our earlier interdisciplinary courses is that they weren't getting enough depth in some ways, and it was working more like, I like the bridge hopping. Who did that? Leah, you did that, right? It was more like we hop from one to the other, and unless you make integration explicit, students don't do it. But also there's this way of, if you keep doing it a little bit at a time throughout, you begin to kind of live into it. So we have faculty from all fields doing the ministry collaboration groups. They bring their own areas of interest to these small groups. So these practica are in addition to those. And I want to tell you about one of those. The practica are where we're seeing right now we've been most successful in doing the kind of thing we hope to do and expand on. So I'm going to take some time to talk to you about one of those practica. And this is the well, I know we'll move on eventually. There. I wonder what that was. Okay, so the practicum in funeral and memorial services. I have to tell you that when I first was appointed to my first full-time appointment, and somebody in my congregation died and I had to do a funeral, not only I had never done one, I had never been to a funeral. I had never been to a funeral. Whew. Every time I think about this course, I think, I'll never forget that first funeral, you know, because I didn't have a clue. Okay, so the course outcomes for this are understand the theology of death and resurrection as it relates to the funeral or memorial service, understand the funeral or memorial service as a service of worship, develop pastoral skills in comforting and guiding those who grieve, and develop competence in integrating theology, worship, and pastoral care. So the way the class proceeds, there are two large class meetings. Now, it's not a large class, but what I mean by all the students gather towards the beginning of the semester and one at the end of the semester. There are required texts, and those required texts are cover grief and theology and diverse contexts. What we find is that we're even more compelled to bring in, we have to be very attentive to bringing in diverse contexts because we're so located in one particular church context, right? And this is the interesting part. It includes observations of pastors in the congregational care department at Church of the Resurrection as the pastor meets with the family to plan for the service and do other things that they would do, and to plan the service, and then they must go and attend to services as well. So they have to do two of these, two of sitting with a pastor and talking with the family and going to the funeral or the memorial service twice during the semester. Now, this is where the benefits of a megachurch. They do, on average, 2 funerals a week, okay? And they have 8 pastors in the congregational care department. So the way this works is when they have a funeral coming up, they send out our connection in the congregational care department sends out an email to the students in this class, and they say, this pastor with this at this time, with this is when the funeral's scheduled. If you want to make this your observation, let me know. We have more than enough funerals, and we have more than enough pastors. Okay, that wouldn't happen elsewhere, but it does happen there. And they spend time, the student will spend time discussing and reflecting with that pastor. The first class meeting is basically a theology and getting used to the kind of orientation, the practice of what happens when someone wants a funeral at Church of the Resurrection. One of the things is that because this church is intentional about teaching, they're also intentional about articulating what it is they do and why they do it, right? So you might have a pastor that's really good at doing funerals and memorials and not have any sense of why I'm good, how I'm good, what contributed to that. But when you have a staff as huge as it is, and you have as many people, and you're expected to teach it to others, you learn to articulate it, right? You put it down on paper. So they have all that, and they've done that. And the students then at the end sort of process this, they tie it back to the theology, and they turn in a written paper. The students, we're about to do it for the second time. The students have gone through these practica, this one and others, find it absolutely transforming for their self-understanding and for their sense of confidence in going into ministry. Even the students who are already in student-pastor situations, because as a student pastor, they're sent out pretty much, they're on their own, right? They're usually the sole pastor in a small congregation. But here they get to observe somebody else and have conversation about that. And it's practical, but one of the professors who teaches the funeral practicum is a systematic theologian with the church practitioner, developed from the very beginning. So I've been thinking about all these things related to this collaboration, and I've sort of been thinking about three aspects of pedagogy that have really been pulled out as things to think about and reflect on. So I don't have any good conclusions yet, but I have a lot of questions and some beginning observations. One is about place, the meaning of place. What changes when we're in a church or when we're on a university campus? The other is collaboration. What is the nature of collaboration in teaching? And the third is integration, and by here I mean the integration of theory and practice, or theology and the practice of ministry. Okay, I've got 5 minutes is what I have according to what we've planned. So place is really something I don't think we think a lot about, but what does it mean that we're all sitting at rectangular tables and the screen is here and we walk across a campus to get to this place? How does that change pedagogically? What does it mean when students walk in and expect to be in a classroom in a university? I mean, there's a certain kind of enculturation about this is how you act when you're in a university, right? You act differently when you're in a church. So how does that form us? The other thing is that when we moved from our campus in the Northeast, the students who there were students there who felt unsafe going to that campus because of its location. Those students pretty much feel safe going to this campus. But the students who felt at home in our old campus now feel unsafe, right? And this is about location. So how does space, place, and location and the meaning it holds matter? How do we establish a home space? We painted one wall in every classroom we used blue. That's St. Paul color. To say, when we're here, this is our space, and we are sharing this space. Students seem to, they wanted students to go to their coffee shop, but students wanted their own little coffee space, right? So you create space, and how does that impact our pedagogy? The next is collaboration. I wonder what it looks like to collaborate with the church. And here I think about collaboration most from social constructionist theories and taking a position of not knowing and multiple ways of knowledge and wisdom. And usually when we think about collaborative pedagogy, we think about students and teachers kind of, minimizing the expert, me giving you content like I've been doing for the last 40 minutes, and having student participation and those kinds of things. But I'm wondering, what does collaboration look like for teachers when the team that's teaching and developing the course are not both academics? One thing we've noticed is that, you put academics in a classroom, and by golly, the classroom is my domain. I have the freedom to decide what is taught and how it's taught. What if I treated the practitioner as my collaborator, not my assistant, not my guest, right? But belonging there. So in that way, we would deeply respect the contribution of the wisdom of the practitioner. What would it mean? What would it mean to get local congregations feeling like they collaborated with theological education? Imagine the kind of transformation that would be. And the more involved they are, the more they're going to feel part ownership. The other area is integration. The integration of theory and practice. We talk a lot about that. We all believe it's important, and it is, and I'm a practical theologian, and that's what I'm all about. But let me tell you an interesting thing that arose in this collaboration. It was the practical theologians who had the most difficulty. Yes, because, the systematic theologians, we'd love to have a practitioner. But they would say, but the practical theologians were like, yeah, but we already teach a practice. So if it's the practitioners that teach the practice, what do you need me for? And in our fields, there are a lot of schools who don't hire pastoral theologians to teach pastoral care. They hire therapists, right? They hire psychologists. So it's very interesting to think about this kind of a dynamic. Our goal is to have the practice of ministry somehow part of every class. But what I think practical theologians can bring, and this is self-serving, I know that, but I've really struggled with this question. It is we concentrate on the integration, right? Neither just the practice, nor the theology or the Bible. Now, sometimes practical theologians have not done our due diligence in doctrine, right? We haven't done the kind of history we need, or the kind of biblical work we should do to really bring that together. But I do think that's something that we can contribute. I have needed to wrestle with this very famous pastor of pastoral care who's written many books that are very different from the kind of books I write. And what do we need each other for? If we're going to collaborate and integrate, we need to have a sense of needing each other. I will say that we've learned that integration takes time. It doesn't work when you teach all the theory here and then send someone out in an internship, right? It takes constant movement back and forth all the time, embodied reflecting. And that's what we talk about in practical theology. It's what I think theological education needs to think about. How do we let this emerge over time, this integration? Okay, now, questions for discussion.